Hello and welcome back to Channel England Football. My name's Gary and this is going to be the second episode of my weekly Sunday news update regarding the England national team. Today we're going to be discussing the 26-man squad that Southgate can now take following the changes from 23. And we're also going to be discussing the news that the Bulgarian chief executive has returned to his post following that outrageous night a couple of years ago when England faced terrible abuse in Bulgaria, in Sofia. So without further delay, let's get into today's video. Before we get into today's video, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. This is a channel dedicated to the England national team, as I've said before. This is, again, the second episode now of what is going to be, trying to be, anyway, every single Sunday I'm going to send out news regarding the England national team or any news that's affecting the England national team. So today we are discussing the changes that UEFA has made this past week to the amount of players we can take within our squad. So it was 23, it's now 26. It's given Southgate actually a lifeline, if you like, because he was always going to be under some criticism with the 23-man squad because there was bound to leave out players that really a lot of people would have said could have made it or should have made it. Now that means there's going to be a lot of those players that probably were on the fringes or any other year would have been certainties to now for them all to go. Gareth Southgate, though, strangely, didn't, from what I'm hearing, didn't actually want the 26-man squad. He was completely happy with the 23-man. He's quoted as saying that he found picking a 23-man squad a real skill, a real art. I mean, that may well be, Gareth, but I think, let's not complain now. 26-man squad is far better than 23. It allows us to be brave. It allows us to take some of those players that might be fringe players or players that certainly would have got in maybe 20 fans out of 30s or 10 out of 30s, and it gives him a chance. It takes the pressure off him when it doesn't need to be. What we didn't want is by the 16th of May or 17th of May, when this squad is announced, as soon as it's come out of Southgate, it's getting criticised for not taking a certain player or anything like that. It sort of takes that off. There's still going to be players missing out, however. England's depth is that strong. For example, let's even take Wan-Bissaka for example. He's probably still not going to go, despite him having, a fantastic season. United are, likely to be in the Europa League final, second in the Premier League, and has had a really good season. But he's still going to be a player that's likely to miss out. So big players are still going to be missing out on this squad, despite it being 26 men. But, this is great news. There's a lot of players now. There's been a lot of speculation about who this is going to benefit mostly. I think that's changing all the time. I think I've heard a lot that, it's important for Grealish, that this gone to 26-man squad, particularly because of his injuries. Players like Henderson with his injuries as well. I think it allows him to take a little bit of a risk now on players that, yes, may not be 100% fit, but on the day, they're some of our better players. People like Jadon Sancho, who, in some people's squads may not have gotten in. Some people are going to expect Mason Greenwood to be in it now. Again, I don't think he will be. Check out my last video. Who else is there? Let's say Trent Alexander-Arnold, obviously, is the big one. It was widely reported, and let's be honest, there's often no smoke without no smoke without fire, should we say? So it was highly likely that actually, given the 23-man squad limitations, that Trent Alexander-Arnold was going to miss out on this squad, which would have been, I think it would have, heaped a lot of pressure and criticism on Gareth Southgate, and particularly those right backs that he did choose. So I think he now is a pick, or a certain pick. I say that Southgate could really, really throw. He could think, right, I've got my 23-man squad, and think, what the hell? Let's take a huge risk on these other three, and he could pick, Mason Greenwood, these players that we wouldn't necessarily think he's going to pick. I don't know. A 26-man squad is something new. It's something different. Who knows what Southgate's going to go. Knowing Southgate, I think he will go safer. I think given the fact that Walker could play then centre-back as well, I believe Trent Alexander then may take him as a second right-back. But it's a really good chance now for players like Alexander-Arnold, some of the players that I think in some squads, let's take for example Sancho, he didn't make Neville's or Carragher's squad. I know some other people's squads he didn't make, but I think it cements his place, and rightly so. A lot of people have already been criticising those comments about him not going, so he's definitely going to go now. But the 26-man squad, yes, it does mean there's a lot more balancing to do. There's going to be a lot more competition in places, but that's not a bad thing. It really isn't. We've got fantastic players. People are already calling for an immediate replacement for Harry Kane. Someone commented in my last video, a regular commenter, so thank you very much, but commented that, he thinks we should take a replacement for Kane. And I think it's a fantastic shout. Yes, we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but he's a completely different striker. I think I've said it before. I've often heard people describe Calvert-Lewin as a good Andy Carroll, which I think is a little bit harsh, but I get what they mean in terms of him being a target man. He's got a good goal scoring ratio, but he's not a direct like-for-like replacement with a Harry Kane. So when you've got people like Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings, for example, these players now, they could start to come into contention for a replacement for Kane, because Kane, yes, he is. He generally is fit, but he has had his injury problems. I think Gary Neville, going back to Gary Neville again, he did mention as well that, replacing Harry Kane is massive. We haven't really got a replacement for Harry Kane, particularly if he takes the squad that a lot of people are predicting he's going to take, or certainly the squad that I picked. There's no cover for Harry Kane within that. Not a direct, like I said, like for like. I think what Calvert-Lewin offers is a different alternative, or someone to chuck on if we need a goal. But I think now it does open that door and that flexibility for an Ollie Watkins or a Danny Ings to come into that team. Danny Ings, any other time, any other generation, is a start, for example. Watkins again scored this weekend, great goal. So, there's a lot of, I'm actually talking myself around the fact that actually he gives himself quite, some more issues to deal with. But again, there's going to be those players that are on the bus, not the plane because it's at home. But there's going to be those players on the bus that I think a lot of people would have been mad if they weren't. So in that sense, it takes the pressure off him. But then it also means that, it's the pressure on a little bit, because he's got to make use of them. Other teams will be. We've got, if we're taking 26 men now, we need to make sure that, we're being brave. I think people will want to see a brave decision now from Gareth Southgate. I'm not saying he will, but if he then goes out and picks 12 defenders, everyone's going to be like, well, what's the point? But I think he will be brave. Other than Trent Alexander-Arnold, I don't think he'll take any other defensive-minded, when I say defense, playing in the back and stuff like that, or holding midfield. I don't think he'll take any more of those. So I think the other two will be attacking players that get into the team. So, I do expect Gareth Southgate to pick that, and I think he's got to. I think the fans will be really disappointed if he doesn't, because obviously there is space for him to pick more defensive-minded midfielders and obviously defenders as well. But I don't think he will. I think he will be brave and make those more attacking options available. And who knows? Essentially now though, the problem we've got is we won't actually know who Southgate's 23-man squad was. We never will. He's going to release his 26-man squad. We won't know if that player would have made the 23-man or not. But because what I was going to say is these guys may make the difference, but we won't know who they are. But essentially, there's going to be, there's going to be those extra options there, different ways of playing, and take a little bit more of a risk with youth, and give those players that a lot, half the fans are calling for, and the other half think no, they're not good enough. So give those guys a chance. I think he will now, and I think it's a great opportunity for England to take all of their attacking, flair players and exciting players and have an exciting tournament, and not be afraid though, because this is the key thing. When we've been struggling in recent matches, Gareth Southgate's been afraid almost to make those substitutions, and ultimately it has proved the right thing to do. But I'm thinking at the latest qualifiers, it was in the last 10 minutes, and you just think, come on, I think a rightful criticism of Southgate is sometimes he's not been as proactive at trying to change a game when it's not going our way. He tends to wait a little bit longer. But I think if you've got a bigger squad like this, I think, why not chuck those players? And I don't think he will change his mindset, But it's almost going to be, my fear now is we're going to have 10 or 15 players almost that, never play the tournament, because he doesn't make many substitutions. He likes to stick with them. And even when we're struggling, Gareth Southgate has to chuck these players on if we're struggling in a game. And that's historically not something he's done very often. But let's see who he takes. But it's a great opportunity for these guys, and a great opportunity for England to take all of these exciting players that we've all been talking about, and it takes the pressure off him in the immediate anyway. So that's my thoughts on that one. So moving on to the next topic this week that's come up in the news regarding the England national team is that the Bulgarian Football Federation he's almost reappointed himself, Borislav Mihailov. Sorry if I've pronounced that wrong for anybody who's Bulgarian who watches the channel, but he's reappointed himself as the chief executive of the Bulgarian FA 500 days or so after that disgraceful night in Bulgaria in Sofia, when England ran out 6-0 winners in the European 2020 qualifiers, but suffered horrendous racial abuse amongst the fans. There was the stadium announcements. The game had to be stopped, I think, 2 or 3 times. And following that, he did resign. But now this week he's apparently rejoined the Football Federation, saying that he's a changed man. And obviously it was a bit of a strange one, because anyone who isn't, familiar with the background of this story will think, well, why is it his fault that, on the night, why should he have to resign essentially because of the fans' behaviour? But I think the reason why it was happening at the time is because leading up to the game, England and the England national team and the fans were all expecting, it was bubbling before, about that the Bulgarian racial abuse in the stands. It was we knew on the night it was going to happen, and leading up to the game, Borislav at the time was defending Bulgarian fans, which he's entitled to do so, but almost a bit nonchalant about it, saying it's, and then I think he started to put the blame on England, saying we're just trying to make Bulgarian football look bad. And I think it was his attitude before the game, and not acknowledging that there was a problem within Bulgarian football. And trust me, the Bulgarian people, I've been to Bulgaria twice, I believe. I've been to Sofia twice on holiday, and they're lovely people. I wouldn't, the vast majority of people aren't racist there, or certainly, not the people I came across. So, we all know in football crowds, particularly in certain ones, sometimes the minority can make themselves louder. So I'm not saying all Bulgarian football fans are racist. That's not what I'm saying, and that's not what Borislav was, that's not what anyone was wanting Borislav to say. It was the fact that there is a contingent within Bulgarian football, particularly like some ultras who were very right-wing, very racist. And obviously it's not something that's acceptable now in today's football. It's really, bang out of order. And it was his attitude, before the game, that warranted his resignation, because he did nothing prior to the game, despite England's worries. And actually what ended up coming to fruition was all what England predicted anyway before the game. So I think it was his unwillingness to acknowledge that before the game, his unwillingness to, when you've got a chief executive of a football federation that has a big racial problem, but they don't admit it, it's a common phrase that to start to solve a problem, you've got to admit you have one in the first place, and he was very reluctant to do so, despite it being quite obvious that within footballing supporters circles within Bulgarian football there was an issue. So he rightly quit his position, but now he's returned this week after 500 days, but then I did start to read a bit of background story. So I know in Bulgaria, Dimitar Berbatov is running for the chief executive position, and it seems like there's a little bit of politics going on there, and he's come back into the system to challenge that. I think there's a bit of a power struggle on the go between certain high-end people within Bulgarian football. So I think a lot of it is down to that. He was almost forced his hand. I think there's probably people in his ear. There's certainly two probably factions within Bulgarian football at the minute. One side led by Dimitar Berbatov and the other side led by Borislav. So, there's a lot to play here. So it's not just a case of that, but this idea that he's a reformed character and so, it is 500 days ago. It was in October 2019, but I think some things are unforgivable. I'm not saying he was responsible for the abuse on the night, but his handling of the situation at the time was horrendous, both before and after the game. So he did deserve to go, and for me he shouldn't have his position back. But I wanted to cover that this week because as England fans we all remember that night. It was a shocking night. The players did fantastic. They played through it, which I would never say they do. My opinion is that they should walk off, but they did play through it. We got a good win. We thrashed them 6-0, which was great considering how we answered with our football. But yeah, this Borislav guy, he shouldn't be back in. It was a disgraceful night. It was a disgraceful lead-up. We predicted it was going to happen. He did nothing about it prior to the game. But this week it was announced that he was returned to the fold. So yeah, I just wanted to cover that and just give my thoughts on it, really. So that's it for today's video. Again, this is the second episode of the England News Weekly episode. So episode 2. Tell me what you think. Please like and subscribe in the comments below. I'm going to start doing these every single week. I'm trying to do it every single Sunday. Hopefully there's going to be enough coming out. I mean, certainly now leading up to the Euros, we're a couple of weeks away now from England, from Southgate announcing his squad. So hopefully there's going to be a lot more things to cover. Obviously there's going to be a reaction video to the squad coming up. I'm also going to be doing a video next week on who should start for England between Rashford, Sancho, Grealish, Sterling, and all those, and Foden, sorry. So there's 5 or 6 players there, all vying for essentially 2 positions. So I'm going to be doing a video on that this week, so watch out for that one. But once again, thank you very much for liking the channel and supporting my channel. All I am is a fan. I'm doing this because I love the national team. I get so excited watching England. I always have done, and I just want to share that with other people, and I'd love sharing it with other people and talking about it. I love the whole feel of it. And I'm just a fan, I'm not out to become a big YouTuber or anything like that. I'm just doing it for the love of English football. Because like I've said before, I've found very little online where I can get my regular England fix, really. I'm always waiting for an international break, and it seems to be only me who's talking about it. So I thought I'd set this up, find like-minded people, and I already have started to. So thank you very much, guys, for anyone who's commented or followed my Twitter page or anything like that. So thank you very much.